the story of a man named Brady, who was all alone. That this group must somehow form a family. That's the way we all became the Brady Bunch. The Brady Bunch. The Brady Bunch. That's the way we became the Brady Bunch.
Thank you for that warm welcome. Always much appreciated. Now, today's video, we have a few clips for you that we put together to show you that Apollo is nothing but fake. And to prove it, we're going to show you a few other little clips here throughout the video. Now, did you know, for example, friends, that 1 out of 5 Americans believe that we didn't land on the moon? Oh, I bet you didn't know that, eh? And that was when this clip was taken. So as you can imagine now, it must be close to 51%. That's a real big number of people that are finally waking up to this nightmare that NASA has been pulling over our eyes for the last 50 years. Now, without further ado, I'd like to just roll the first section of this clip. So let's roll it, please.
1 in 5 Americans are believed now to entertain doubts.
And you hear about the fact that the landing was actually done in a television studio.
And there was the big black background with, like, fake stars and stuff. It's the flag being planted on the moon facing one way and the shadow of the man being the other way.
I mean, I've heard that maybe the terrain that was seen on the video wasn't accurate, the walking wasn't accurate.
There are no stars in some of the photographs, and that there should be because there was no atmosphere and that the stars would shine so brightly.
40 years ago, the Cold War locked the USA in an ideological struggle with the Soviet Union. On October the 4th, 1957, the Soviets launched Sputnik, the world's first satellite. It was a coup for communism. The breakthrough hit America right where it hurt, in the heart of high technology.
Sputnik shocked a lot of people in this country, and I think the president was looking for a way to respond to this. And at the advice of a number of people, he chose an objective that he felt for sure we could be first.
At the peak of the Apollo program, NASA employed 400,000 people. If the moon landings were faked, thousands of scientists and technicians were either duped along with the rest of us, or they've been extraordinarily good at keeping a secret all these years. July the 16th, 1969. The astronauts prepare for takeoff. While the world waited for history to be made, there was already one man who had his doubts. During the 1960s, Bill Kaysing was head of technical publications for Rocketdyne, a company involved in the manufacture of the Apollo rockets. This gave him access to top-secret documents. What he read led him to question the feasibility of the whole moon project.
I really believe that they weren't in the command capsule at launch. They did a little bit of a magician act with the astronauts. They went up the elevator, but they came down the elevator. In other words, they did not want to risk the lives of the astronauts in case the Saturn blew up.
Like Bill Kaysing, Ralph Rene, a self-taught engineer and author, believes that the technology of the day simply wasn't up to the task.
There is absolutely no way they went to the moon with what they had. In fact, there's no way they can go today. There's no way they can go tomorrow. You don't send man where you haven't sent the monkey.
Nevertheless, the president had promised a man on the moon by 1970. If NASA couldn't do it, they'd have to fake it, with foolproof documentary evidence. Marcus Allen is the British publisher of Nexus, a magazine dedicated to alternative politics, history, and science.
Those photographs can be demonstrated not to have been taken on the lunar surface. Now, if they were not taken on the lunar surface, there's only one other place they could have been taken, and that's on Earth.
Documentary evidence from all 6 of the successful Apollo landings shows similar anomalies. In some, areas lit from behind, which should be in deep shadow, are bright and perfectly visible. In other pictures, the shadows are at near right angles, suggesting two separate light sources. Perhaps most surprisingly, there are no stars in the Apollo photographs, even though they were taken from space. When the archive film is sped up, the astronauts appear to be running at normal speed in terrestrial gravity.
Well, slackass, hey, looks like Bill Casing actually has a real good point there, hey? Looks to me like the astronauts went down the fire escape to avoid being burned to death if that rocket exploded. Oh, they certainly did, hey? What a bunch of chicken shits. Ooh, not only that, you gotta look at this here, slackass. You wanna take a look at this? Oh, my dear God. Now you see that up there, eh? Oh, that's a shadow, all right? Now you take a look at this down here, right there. Now that's another shadow. Okay, now, it's just like NASA said there in that little cartoon there. Oh, the only way this could happen is if the moon had two suns. Oh, boy. And you know what I think? I think they're right for a change. Because that's the only way this could happen, slackass. So, guess what? That boomerang just hit you right in the shins, didn't it? Oh, it's too bad it didn't hit you a little bit higher up. Would have knocked some common sense into you. Oh, my dear God. Well, if you think that's good, just wait till you see the next little part I got there for you, slackass. Oh, it's good to see that you came back to life again, eh? What did they do there? Just chuck you in the ground and add the water? Oh, my dear God. Well, let's just have a look at part 2 of this here. See if we can dig up some more dirt on you. All right, slackass? Okay, let's get on with it. Roll the clip, please.
NASA faced its own challenges trying to prepare the astronauts for life in space.
Well, there were a lot of different schemes of suspending a person and taking up 1/6 of his weight by pulleys or working on a sort of a slanted platform.
I do not think it was feasible for the astronauts to take the wonderful pictures that NASA has presented as having been taken on the moon. There are so many impediments that were natural. The fact that they wore gloves that couldn't be manipulated, the fact that they didn't have any sources of light, any flash.
Ralph Rene also believes the design of the Apollo suits would have prevented the astronauts operating anything as delicate as a camera. The lunar cameras didn't need a viewfinder. The restrictions of the helmet made it impossible for the astronauts to look down and frame a shot.
Basically, you could just sort of point that camera at what you wanted without having to really look through a viewfinder.
This is where the shutter is on the Hasselblad camera, which cannot be seen from inside the helmet the astronauts are wearing. So how do they know they've taken a photograph? How do they know their fingers even got onto the shutter? How do they know they pressed it?
But even if you accept that photographs could physically have been taken on the moon, you're still left with the most famous of the apparent photographic anomalies, the shadows.
The shadows are one of the strong proofs that we never went to the moon. If you examine pictures offered by NASA as genuine, you find that in many cases the shadows are not parallel. Well, since the sun was the only source of light, all shadows on the moon should be exactly parallel, but they aren't.
The lunar shadows sometimes fall in different directions. The skeptics claim this as incontrovertible evidence of at least 2 light sources.
There's only one sun. There are not 2. But these shadows are anomalous in that sometimes they are diverging from objects and sometimes converging. And it can't be. You can go any place on this planet when the sun's up and you look at 2 objects and those sun shadows are parallel.
Well, let's have a look at one of the most famous photographs of the 20th century, Man on the Moon. It was taken by Neil Armstrong of Buzz Aldrin on Apollo 11. Given that it's very harsh light, as you can see here, where it strikes directly, you would expect the shadow area to be virtually invisible, but it's not.
The symbolic highlight of Apollo, the planting of the American flag, has also generated deep suspicion.
Wherever there's an American flag, it's always brilliantly lit up, even if it's on the shadow side. And on the shadow side, that should be really dark black. But they had little spotlights, obviously, because that's the only way you can do it.
Oh, geez, that's great. Is the lighting halfway decent?
But decreased gravity and the lack of atmosphere can't provide an explanation for the next apparent blunder. When the 16-ton Eagle touched down, it should have disturbed the surface of the moon, blowing the top layer of dust away to expose the rock beneath. But the images show footprints clearly imprinted around the base of the spacecraft. Surely the dust would have blown away, or worse.
This enormously powerful jet of flame and heat and gas, it would have easily scooped up an enormous crater. In fact, there was supposition that the crater would have been so big that the lunar lander would have disappeared into it. That's true.
Ralph Rene has designed a simple experiment to illustrate the point. He's calculated that the landing module would have been approximately 26 times more powerful than a domestic leaf blower. And if a humble leaf blower can leave a crater in a gravel pit, the module with 10,000 pounds of thrust should have made a canyon.
They didn't move dry dust, they didn't move little rocks, they didn't move anything. So the demonstration is to show that this stuff will disappear immediately, and I'll even be able to gouge some kind of a hole. Come here, you. I haven't used you in a long time. Here we go.
According to Ralph Rene's experiment, the moon, like the gravel pit, wouldn't have stood a chance.
When it actually landed, the dust was all still there. Now, how can that be?
Now we're going to give you a little bit of an example, Slackass, of exactly what a leaf blower will do, all right? Now you turn around and you say, well, yeah, well, the jump jet Harrier has tons and tons of thrust. Well, let's compare that with the leaf blower, all right, Slackass? Okay, so now over here, see, we've got Ralph Rene. You know, we resurrected him from the dead too, you see. And now what Ralph Rene did is he took this little leaf blower and he took it to this here gravel pile. And you want to notice all the dust there, Slackass. It's all over the place. Now, you would imagine what a 10,000 pound thrust on the land would have done? Holy Moses, oh my dear God. It would have been all over the place up on the surface of the real moon if them dudes would have went there. Isn't that right, Slackass? So don't go giving me your jump jet Harrier theory and that little theory there of your crazy cotton-picking rabbit varmint either there, eh? Because that little carrot-toting, munching, crunchy little bugger there, you know what he's going to? He's going down the drain along with you real soon, like. And another thing here, Slackass, you want to try to tell me that on the moon you can't see any dust being kicked up by the engine, but you say that there's lots of dust being kicked up by that engine. Well, that's supposed to be 10,000 pounds, right? Well, look at this. Like I said, all that dust all down there, and that's from a tiny little leaf blower. So, Slackass, why don't you go and blow it out your ears for a change and tell us the truth, eh? Oh, you are one cotton-picking liar, and you can take the boomerang and you can just throw it right at your little rabbit friend there, and maybe you can knock some sense into him if it hits him in the head, too. Oh, brother. Well, I'll tell you what, if that's not enough evidence for you, Slackass, then there's not going to be enough evidence, is there now, mate? Hey? Ooh, my dear God. And that goes for that crazy screwy Crewy, you know, the dude that's a little bit screwier and a little bit loonier these days. Oh, this is terrible. And I hear your little shills get paid $54 a comment for 500 words or more? Holy cotton-picking cow! That really takes the biscuit now, don't it, Slack-ass? Now, if that doesn't piss people off, I don't know what will. So, that's my spiel. Mr. Strange out.